Every 12 years, the horse returns to the ancient Chinese calendar. But every 60 years, something truly rare happens. The horse arrives paired with its most potent element, fire. The result is a year unlike any other, a year that burns away what no longer serves and reveals the gold that was always waiting underneath. So, who better to guide us through it than my dear friend, the remarkable Sandra Wallin, whose program, The Fire Horse, is a guided journey of turning old patterns into new possibilities and transforming what's burning you out into the fire that actually lights you up. Today, we explore what the Fire Horse is asking us, personally and collectively, about horses as healers, grief transformation, and how to tell the difference between the fire that refines you and the fire that consumes you. Settle in, the fire is lit. Let's begin. Welcome, everyone. I am thrilled today to be sitting down with my very dear friend, Sandra Wallin. And if you excuse me, I have to read from my notes because just to give you a little bit of background about Sandra, if people listening don't know her, you're a psychotherapist, a certified Psych-K instructor, which means you teach Psych-K as opposed to being a facilitator. You're an author, co-creator of the Council of Horses Oracle card deck. You hold a Bachelor of Science degree, a Bachelor of Education, a master's degree in counseling psychology. You have also taught and lectured around the world, been featured in medical symposiums with the likes of Candice Pert and David Suzuki, and have worked very closely with the amazing Dr. Bruce Lipton, the author of Biology of Belief. But apparently that wasn't enough, as you are now working on your doctorate.
I am.
Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you.
I'm amazed you have time to come and join us today.
Well, first of all, it's an honor to come and join you because I love you so much. And this is just like one of our, afternoon teas. So it's kind of fun to be doing this together. And I do seem to be a bit of a lifelong learner, which is, I think, a really good quality for someone who is a school teacher and still is a teacher, and that we love to keep learning. And I think what we'll find out a little bit today is that horses have always been my greatest teachers.
Okay, that's fun. And we are going to be talking about the year of the Fire Horse. So tell me, what difference is the year of the Fire Horse as opposed to any other year of the horse? Can you give me a little bit of background?
Yeah, well, I'm not super savvy when it comes to the astrological aspects of things, but when a horse comes into the astrology of things, my ears tend to prick up a little bit. And this is a very unique year. The Fire Horse year comes around once every 60 years. So I was just a few months old when the first one came through. And the alchemy, really, the biochemistry of fire and horses, I think, lends itself to a really powerful year, something to pay attention to. And it's really going to be about this year in particular. It's interesting what's going on in the world. It's like the old paradigms and the old structures are breaking down and falling away. And the fire, if you think about fire in nature, it moves to the places where it's gotten dry, where life necessarily isn't thriving there and it needs to be regenerated. So fire has that quality to be able to do that. I think horses do that for us in so many ways. I think that horses are not just of the element fire, but in this particular year, the horsepower, the potency of their character, of their nature, of their wildness in a way as well. When we think about a wildfire, sometimes that frightens people. And we especially here where we're living, right, Claire? I mean, when I grew up, we're in British Columbia, and where I grew up, there were never, ever forest fires. And now it seems like as we come into the hot times of the year, forest fires are a regular concern. And this is an example of the fire horse perhaps out of balance. So I think in my experience and my relationship to the fire horses, it's about not just burning brightly, because that's certainly going to be part of their invitation and maybe their nudge and their kick in the pants, But it's also about learning how to be a fire tender, to take care of our fire so that we don't burn out, so that we can have those embers in our hearth and be warmed by them, but then add fuel to them when it's time to burn, when it's time to heat things up, when it's time for things to burn away and transition from one state or form into another. I think this is the capacity and the gifts that the fire horses are bringing for us at this particular time.
So you're saying that there's a huge transformation can happen in this year. I know, I mean, I think a lot of people who will be listening to us weren't alive during the last
Mm.
uh, time that the fire horses came
Are you
galloping
saying
through the
I'm
world.
old, Claire? Are you saying I'm getting
No, we
old?
are wise, Sandra.
We are wise. The old gray
And
mare.
absolutely. And I remember that year that I was alive. I was 7, and it was a hugely transformative year for me. It was the year I became allergic to horses.
Wow.
So it kind of holds
That's
a big
interesting.
significance for me. Yeah.
That's very interesting, the synchronicity of that, that you
Mm-hmm.
became allergic to horses during a fire horse year and that
Mm-hmm.
you remember that.
Yeah. And all my life, it's been about trying to cure that. And then you start to think, well, maybe that was for a reason to
Mm.
get me on the journey that I'm on, and meeting you, and then ultimately curing those allergies. And it
And
took me
being
nearly
able
60 years to do it.
to, and then going out and spending time in the paddock here with the horses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing.
So the fire horse in your own herd. I mean, you've had many beautiful horses gallop through your life.
Mm.
Of all of them, which would you describe as truly embodying the fire horse?
That's a really interesting question because I think at first glance we would think it would be one. I mean, Chiron, this is Chiron here. He certainly embodies fire. He's very spirited in that way. And I think that all horses have fire, the element of fire in them for sure, just like we do. But I would say right now, when I think about what this year is about, and for me, it's really about alchemy, which is one of my favorite words, but it's also, I think, one of the most interesting processes. It would be my beloved Mare Grace, who you've heard me talk about many,
Mm-hmm.
many times. And I think I would equate, well, I would, if we were talking about her, I would be able to talk to her about her in every element. But this year, because it's such a potent year, and she had the capacity to be such an apothecary and such a transformer that she could meet someone where they were at. So in a way, kind of, if you think about the alchemical process, that we could bring the leadened, the heavier qualities or aspects of our personality or of our growth to her for transformation. And she would help us light the fire within us in a way and turn that lead into gold. And I think that I've seen her do that so many times with so many different people for so many different, I mean, with so many different types of fuel that they were bringing to her, to her altar in a way. So I would say Grace would be the the the, the heart of the flame in a way for me as a fire horse. Even though she was dark, a lot of people think, oh, well, fire horses have to be red. No, fire horses can be any color. Of course, it's just the nature, their nature that they bring to the equation, to the transformational equation. And I think she was an absolute master at that. She would help people tend their fire, light their fire, burn away that which no longer served them, become the alchemist, step into their own power, transform, uh, transform illness, transform impasses, transform the places where we felt perhaps stuck, and also allow people. I would see her stand with a child with autism and hold the most gentle, tender of spaces. So in that way, I imagine her just bringing the gentlest of candlelight to that experience. And then I've also seen her drop her shoulder and kind of bump a leader who thought they were all that, and letting them know, actually, where are you, where you're not standing in your power, you're not being authentic. And so she'd bring a little bit more heat to that kind of a conversation. She was just a shapeshifter, and I think in a way fire does that, because it takes on so many different forms. And I think that would be one of the many, many reasons I could share about why Grace would embody fire and be a fire horse. Thanks
So
for
she
asking about
was,
her, because I miss her so deeply.
I unfortunately never got to meet her, but
Mhm.
I've kind of experienced her through you and the
You have.
stories that you've told me about her. And but she had an incredible healing quality from what you've explained to me. And but even though she's on the other side, do you feel that she still has that quality and still reaches out to you and to help people?
In the beginning, when she passed, because I held her through after she passed, and I laid with her through the night, and Kyron stood with us as well. And it was so painful after, for a long time after, that I think I almost just put a wall up around being connected to her in a different way. And it was the writing of the card, because she passed away when I was writing the Council of Horses. And it was the last card that I wrote. And it was really painful and really important. And it reconnected us in a different way. The writing of the grief. I was just talking about how she was such a shapeshifter, and she could be available to people in so many different ways. So when I came to write the essay for her, I was like, well, how do I, which facet, because she was so luminous, like a diamond, really, so many different facets. And it was just so clear for me what I needed to write was what I needed to write for me, which was the story of the grief and the loss, and how over the years she was a grief tender for people that had lost profound losses of family, of loved ones, of livelihood, of health. And so grief was something that she was really a master at helping people carry. And I say carry because I think grief isn't something we're meant to put down and move, to take it out and set it over there. I think the beautiful thing about grief and all emotions really is that it's meant to change us. We are meant to be changed by grief. We do not occupy the same form that we had before such profound loss. And so I think what was happening for me during that time was almost entering into a cocoon or a chrysalis where I really needed to be completely dissolved before I could reconstitute myself into a new relationship with her without her being here in the physical. And I think that that's what the writing of that card did.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed me to put my pieces back together in a way, but in a different way, because they can never fit the way that they were. And I've heard from so many people, some that knew Grace before, but other people that have never met Grace, but they have now through the cards. And her card is about the algorithms of grief. And people will write me, you can almost feel the tears coming through the email. Like it's almost like the emails are soggy and wet, because there's such deep stories of her holding sacred space for them as they were going through the grieving process. So absolutely, she's 100% teaching me still from in a different format, in a different way, that her gifts are still here and palpable and helping nourish the human spirit. And
I
you
think
know that because because she made some visitations with you.
Oh, yes. I remember speaking to you on the phone, and I was dealing with something that was creating massive fear, and it had done for several months. And we were just talking about it and what we could do. And then we weren't really talking about grace, but we were talking about other things that I could do. Then afterwards, my husband and I decided, let's go to Starbucks. And I'm sitting in the car, and then I suddenly realized the fear's gone. And I don't know why I looked in the back seat like I was expecting to see a fear sitting on the back seat. And it's like, where have you gone? And it was like it disappeared in an instant. And realizing, no, everything's fine. Why was I worrying? And then I was doing some muscle testing. It's like, what happened? This was very mystical
Mhm.
and very dramatic and incredibly transformative. Muscle testing, no, I literally had been visited by Grace, and she had taken that fear away, and it was the only thing that had happened. I'd gone through that for several months, and then no fear, just gone.
It's a perfect example, Claire, of who she was in person, in real life, when she was here embodied in Grace. I mean, her, interestingly enough, her registered name was A Grace Remembered. Did I ever tell you that before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and so I think she's helping us remember our grace and helping us remember that she is still here, potent and powerful and as
Mm-hmm.
catalytic as ever, and as tender and as kind for those who need her to show up in that way. I was delighted, but I'm never surprised by how she nourishes people. And you're exactly right. Like, she will go out and meet someone with a cancer diagnosis or with a grief or with some really tectonic shift that's happening in their lives. And she could just transmute it so quickly and easily in their company with them. Obviously, they are doing that, but it's like she is the fire that's turning the one thing into the other, or helping us turn the one thing into the other. And that it would be completely gone is not a surprise. And yet, still, how magical and how wonderful that horses have the
Mm-hmm.
capacity.
And I think all animals, they are so powerful. And for anyone who has had an animal who has lost them and they are residing over the Rainbow Bridge, they're always with us. Just that, that feeling of imagining their little paw prints or the whinnying of the horse outside. They're just little reminders that they're always with us. You just can't see them, but you can
Mm.
certainly feel them in your heart. And they take away your fear, and they take away the grief, and they transform everything in our lives. Just incredible creatures, all furry creatures.
All furry creatures.
So, for someone who's listening to this, who has never stood by a horse, maybe a little bit scared of them, they are very, very large creatures, especially if you're like me, who's just used to cats and dogs. Um, what is it that the horse can show us that a human teacher just really can't?
I think there's a level of, I think, and this is a generalized statement, it's not necessarily the truth, but it's something that is worth, I think, considering. I think one of my friends and mentors, Linda Koanov, talks about human nonsense, the human nonsense, and how it fills up the space between us. And I think horses have an innate way and an incredible way, first of all, to not be caught up in the human nonsense. And then because they're not bringing, as a human, more human nonsense to the conversation, I think the relationship is much more clean and clear. I think the ability to be able to have a conversation with a horse, whether we're standing beside them in a paddock, or whether we're looking out at them across a field, or whether we're working with them in a wisdom card deck or a painting or just in a dream. There's, from a scientific perspective, there's quality that we all have. And this is what I'm saying about human nonsense. We've kind of gotten out of our innate capacity to be attuned to subtle changes in the environment, subtle changes that happen within the affect of who or whatever it is that we're conversing with. Horses' insides always match their outsides. That's not the case for humans. And so I think when we're with horses, it's always interfacing with a completely congruent and authentic being, a sentient being. As you were saying, all animals are this way. Horses, I think, because of the evolutionary journey that we've had with them, and canines as well, but horses in particular, they have what when you think about, so if we think about Candace Pert, who wrote the beautiful book The Molecules of Emotion, she talks about how we have uh, a lot of emotional receptor sites essentially in the gut. And horses have such a large gut surface area wise, so that it's almost like their spidey senses that pick up those emotional nuances that are happening in a herd or happening in an environment. They have a larger capacity just surface area wise to be able to tune in what's actually happening within the person that they're standing with, or the other horses that happen to be around, or the other wildlife or creatures that happen to be in the area. And so when we're standing with horses, as you were saying, I think they hear us differently. They tune into us differently. They see us differently. And they're not affected by what tends to get in the way between two humans having a conversation. And they're not always jumping ahead to, I wonder what should be the next question I need to ask, or I wonder how I should respond to the last question they brought up, because that was a really important point and I don't want to forget about that. They're not tracking things in that way. They're 100% living in present time. And that's why I think I've seen, even with myself, with my own diagnosis, how Grace knew where that was in my body. Although at that time, I just thought she was putting her head to my heart because there was some stress and some strife happening in our lives at that time. But I've seen her do that with other people that have had cancer diagnoses, where she just goes right to that place on their body and breathes right into that place. And, you know, anecdotally, I can share this as sort of evidence in a way, but otherwise, I don't have the concrete scientific data to say. But the people that have come out with those types of diagnoses soon after did not have that diagnosis anymore. So what you were just saying before about being able to take something and turn it into something else, she was a master at doing that. I think all animals have the ability to do that. I think we have the ability to do that, but we've just lost our way a little bit. So I think one of the reasons horses and humans are such a natural pairing or partnership is, I think horses have remembered, or they remember who we are in our original blueprint. And along the way, we've kind of got bumped and jostled and maybe forgotten that sacred contract that we made to each other and to the planet. And so I think one of the reasons they're so benevolent and patient with us is they have remembered that. And they're just, I love how you said standing alongside, because I really do see that. I think over the years, when we think about the times of dominance over horse, and I think hopefully we're moving past now to a relationship of equals, but there was certainly a time when you would see human hoof prints, human footprints, and hoof prints alongside each other. If you look at the evolutionary sands we walk beside, and then the human footprints disappeared, not because we disappeared, but because we were riding the horse. We were on top of the horse. And now I think what's happening is we're starting to see the human and the horse prints coming back alongside each other again. So even though you might not have consciously recognized what you said when you did that about the horse beside the human, I really think this is
Mhm.
part of our journey, and also part of our responsibility. I mean, the idea of of making decisions that are good for the environment, that are good for nature. I think we just look at, I mean, nature's teaching us all the time, but I think the relationship that we have with horses lends itself to a different kind of tutelage, a different kind of healing, a different kind of learning, a different kind of friendship and kinship. And I think it does go back to those. I mean, you look at all the different peoples that that we have evolved, that we have been able to journey from the past to where we are today because of the gifts of horses, the benevolence of horses.
Um, the fire that creates versus the fire that destroys.
Mm.
You say that the fire horse asks us to blaze fully without burning out. And I love that idea, because we live in a world where so many people are running on empty, um, so much stress, so much turmoil. How do we tell the difference in our own bodies between the fire that is refining us and the fire that is consuming us?
Well, I think you named it: overwhelm and burnout. Energy, fire's energy. We're made of energy. We're energetic beings. When the fire is depleted, so it can burn brightly, but at some point there's only so much fuel to consume. So if our body, our cells, our thoughts, our relationships are the fuel we're bringing to the fire, at what cost? At what cost? So I think in the natural world, there's the seasons, and there's the tides, there's the ebbs and the flows, and there's cycles of the seasons. I think we tend to, because we can turn on a light and it be light 24 hours a day. I think back to what we were just talking about, the wisdom of nature. We don't tend to follow the seasons anymore. And so in winter, when we're quote unquote supposed to be hibernating and resting and rejuvenating and restoring, we're still blazing forward in the full heat of the summer. And that's one of the things that the teachings of the fire horse is going to do, is to help us know when it's time to bank the fire and allow it to rest. And then when is it now time to bring some of that fuel you've been gathering, adding it to the flame and allowing it to burn brighter. So the idea of restoration or depletion, burning ourselves out, we know. How do we know the difference? Just by how we're responding in conversations, the energy we have, the creativity that's fueling our days, the joy that we're having or experiencing in each day, but also that we're giving out and that we're sharing and offering to others. All of these are representations about how we're tending our fire.
It's interesting that you say that, because we work a lot with oracle card decks. I mean, you are an author of an oracle card deck. Um, but how many times when I have asked a question of an oracle card, um, and got an answer that rest. What the
Yeah.
best thing that you can do right now is rest. And you feel that in the resting that you're not making progress. It's like, oh, I need to be doing something. I need to be making those steps forward. But in actual fact, if you rest, you are making far more progress. And it's in the resting that you are transforming and rejuvenating, giving you the energy that when it's time, that you then can take those next steps forward.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I remember at a particular time where it felt like everything was asking of me, and I was and I felt like I just did not have enough time. And I thought, what's the impasse here? And it's just kind of like what you were talking about. And I thought, okay, what if I reframe that? What would I want instead? I thought, okay, I wasn't giving myself permission to rest. So I thought, what about something like, I give myself permission to do nothing. And in the spirit of doing nothing, nothing is left undone. No, it was in the doing of nothing, nothing is left undone. A bit of a mind parable there, but I liked it because I can be more productive
Mm-hmm.
And also then here's part of the human condition as well that horses don't necessarily adhere to. Notice even the word productivity, that we have to be living in a productive way. And gosh, maybe a reframe about what productivity is and what the requirement of that is, and why is that necessity, and why is that the currency that we exchange with each other all the time, as opposed to play. I mean, once we grow up, a lot of times we think there's no time for play, there's no room for play. We have to be productive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe that's one of the reasons why being an art therapist was so much fun, because then when I'm working, so to speak, it's always about play and
Mm-hmm.
re-engaging with that. And same with being with the horses. It's something that brings me joy. And you say that all the time, Claire. You say, let's only do what brings us joy. And what a beautiful declaration. What an incredible vow or commitment to make to ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
to the people we share our loves with. And Joseph Campbell talks about following our bliss. So, and following our bliss is really the only way that we're ever going to be living the most blissful life, but the life that then again offers the return on the investment of the joy and of the
Mm-hmm.
bliss. So I think that that's something we so often pay lip service to, but perhaps don't walk that talk. And I, again, back to the fire horse, which is going to light a fire under those old patterns and belief systems that no longer serve us. And sometimes what's no longer serving us is that we are just burning too brightly for too long. And so we need to take some time to rest, to
Mm-hmm.
to put our feet up by the fire, as opposed to continuously gathering fuel for it.
And I think along with that is giving yourself permission to say no,
Mm.
especially if you're in an environment where people are asking too much. You kind of can get sucked into that feeling of, well, I have to do this. I have to do this to be liked, to be respected, just for people to think well of me. And it's actually okay to say, no, that's not okay. And it's amazing how people say, oh, that's okay. It's okay. It's like, oh, wow, that wasn't quite so difficult. And take time for yourself.
Mm.
Like if you if you are burnt out, you are no good for anyone. You're no good for yourself, for friends, family, the world. So yeah, just allow that step back, just allow that rest and reconnect with, as I always say, what brings you joy. And it changes your life. If you wake up on a Monday morning going, I get to do what brings me joy today, that lights your fire.
It does light the fire. And Grace was a master at teaching people the art of saying no. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a quote that just popped into my head that I used with my daughters, but I also use as my own filter too. It comes from David White, and he says, anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Uh, mm,
Love that.
oh, yeah. So sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when I feel like I've got a little bit adrift, and Grace will come and David White will come, and between the two of them, okay, kick in the pants. Um,
Mm-hmm.
is this bringing you alive? And sometimes that means we say goodbye to things and to people and to places, lovingly and kindly. Uh, but my daughter reminded me not so long ago of that beautiful quote about a reason, a season, and a lifetime. That there are relationships that come in and last are there for a reason, and some for a season, and some for a lifetime. And to allow again the rhythm of that, the natural ebbs and flows of relationships. Sometimes that's what's meant to happen with them, is that
Mm-hmm.
they evolve, or we evolve, and into a different stage.
Wonderful. You have written that this year moves toward what has been waiting patient as stone for the conditions to finally be right. What do you think the Fire Horse is asking of us? Collectively, not just personally, and especially at this moment in time for the world.
I think the fire horse is impatient with the dross, the accumulation of false narratives. And I think the fire horse, I keep saying I think, I feel, I believe, I intuit in my bones. I the reason that the fire horse lit a fire under me at the start of this year to create this and to co-create this, it would be more accurate, because I needed to burn away the things, the old patterns, the old paradigms, the things that were keeping me in a certain stasis or a certain form that I could feel within me. It was time to move beyond. And Bruce Lipton talks about this, how we're kind of coming to this place of maximum entropy, of maximum chaos. And when you think about, even example would be the phoenix, how the phoenix literally burns to ash, and then out of the ashes arises something new. I think that we are on this precipice, and I say precipice intentionally, because there are places in the world where we we are at an edge, and what choices and what decisions we make now are going to influence in profound ways what comes next. And I think this is the invitation to really be thoughtful and mindful and heartful and present with what no longer serves us, and what do we need to invite in to nourish, to fuel the next phase, the next stage of humanity, of our relationship with the planet, of our relationship with each other, and of our relationship with ourselves.
Mhm.
And I think that, a million years ago, when my daughter was in junior high school, we went and saw the Dalai Lama speak. And at that point, the school I was working at worked with the Dalai Lama Center for Compassionate Learning in Vancouver. So we were invited to bring some students with us to this big gathering in the hockey arena. So there was 30,000 people there. And one of the little girls from the school got up and asked the Dalai Lama, "What can I do to change the world?" And he smiled at her in that beautiful way that he has. And he said, "Changing the world is too big a thing." He said, "If you can hold positive thoughts in your head, in your mind, and compassion in your heart, then that is the way and the only way that you or anyone can change the world." So the idea, I know sometimes when we look out at things, it looks so big and so far away and so hot. We think about that, that's a real big bonfire, that's a forest fire. How do I make a difference there? And I just remember, I take great comfort in those words that, okay, how do I do it? I start close in. I start with me. I tend my own fire. And if it means that for today, I can light a candle of hope or of kindness, then I will do that. And if it means that I smile at someone at the grocery, or I open the door for someone, like those small, I think they call them random acts of kindness, or those small acts of kindness, but that is the fuel that I want to be bringing to the collective fire. And so if we can each be responsible in our own way, in our own families, in our own communities, and with our own reflection, how do we look at ourselves and what do we see reflected back? The fire horse will stand right here with us. That's one of the beautiful things about the horses, is that they are the companions for the journeys, but they don't they're not going to show us something that doesn't really exist. So there's no false flattery, there's no platitudes. They're going to absolutely reflect back what's at the heart of things. And sometimes that can be something we don't always want to look at, but they will stand there with us while we do look at that and figure out a way through, or figure a way of tending or healing, or engendering or compassionating what needs to happen to be able to, again, I really do see this as a journey, move further along on the journey. And at the end of the fire horse year, which will be next February, the fire horses do not go away. The calendar in the Chinese zodiac changes, but the fire horse and their lessons they remain. I think they are kind of an eternal, if we want to think about that, they're an eternal flame that will be with us, hopefully. I hope in my life for all time, for always, for every day, for every season, for every year.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the three doorways because I want to get more into that process of transformation. And you've created three ways in through those doorways: the
Mm-hmm.
awakening, the essentials, and the year of alchemical transformation. So, for someone listening right now who feels something stirring but doesn't know where to begin, how do they know which door is theirs? What's the first step?
Sometimes, yeah, the first step is the first step, which would be the awakenings, which is just a free gift from the horses and I for people to enter into the initial meet and greet. In the horse world, we often talk about meeting the herd. And so this is a very first encounter with the fire horses. It's designed to be an invitation to gather up your fuel, gather the things that you want to bring to the hearth for warming, for burning. And there will be an initial practice there called the morning sovereignty, which is about how do we, and because horses really like us when we're in our bodies, that's the best place to be. So it's a practice that helps us to get present in present time and to be with embodied within ourselves. And then the essentials is going to take people a little bit further along the path with the horses, where it's going to be an opportunity to strike the match, to strike the flint and create a spark, to light the fuel that you've brought in the awakenings. And then the year long is a year of alchemical transformation, where the horses are going to see us through all of the seasons. And it starts in the spring, but we can start whenever we come to it. And it really is about learning how to be an alchemist, to be able to transmute and transform things from one form or shape into another, from one belief system and pattern into another belief system or pattern. And it's offered in a couple of different ways. Sometimes people really want to create that pathway to become the path maker themselves. So they're going to be a pilgrim in a way, a solo traveler. And other people really love to gather around the communal fires. And that's what the second version of the year long can be. There can be an opportunity to create your own fire, or another where we create the fire together. And there'll be what I'm calling kindling circles, where we're going to gather once every season in community, online community, to be able to witness and share and nourish uh, what we're hearing in each other's stories and journeys as well. So those are the different pathways that are available through this particular program. And I think, however, that as I was just saying, once the year is finished, I think the fire horses are still going to be. I'm going to transition. So again, transitioning from one form into another, as opposed to it ending at the end of the season. I'm going to go into conversation and dialogue with them and figure out how to continue the fire tending thereafter. But for this season, this year, that's what we're talking about. Those four different ways.
Awesome. And on the other side, like for someone who's walked the full year with you in this amazing Firehorse program that you've put together, um, how are they different on the other side?
Well, each person will have their own unique transformation because they're bringing different fuel to the fire. They're learning how to tend it differently. So some people might be bringing the fuel of relationship, where they want to grow and nourish that. Other people will be bringing a fed upness with a certain career pathway, and they're ready to bring that to the flames, to allow that to be taken and reconstituted so they can step forward onto a new path and enlivened path, one that's lit in a different way. And some people will come because they can't see beyond. If you think about the fire burning at night around a hearth, like the illumination goes out so far and they can see that, but they can't see past that. And so then what the year might offer to that person is how they can be the torch, be their own torch, be their own flame carrier. And wherever they move forward in the world, they are illuminating the world around them. So I love that there's a versatility really for what each person is bringing and what each person is intending. The commonality is going to be turning one thing into another. The commonality will be burning away and leaving behind, allowing it to be turned to ash, that which no longer serves, so that the fire horse or the phoenix-like horse, the alchemist, can come through and create a new reality for themselves, for their career, for their families, for each other.
So, turning your own question back on you, you have asked everyone who comes to this work one question: what magic has been living in you all along, waiting only for permission to blaze? So, I ask it back of you. What is the fire horse asking of you this year?
That's a cheeky question, Claire.
Sorry.
It's asking me to burn brighter. And you know that there's been a project that I've been tending the fire around. And I'm really, really excited that it will be lighting itself, bringing itself out into the world, hopefully this summer. And it will be a new way of. So what have I done? I've stepped out of some career relationships that I've outgrown, and now looking at setting down. Well, maybe I won't even use that. I was going to say setting down some stepping stones, but really, if I'm going to use the fire analogy, it's about bringing the light of what I've just created in relationship with the beloved, incredibly generous Dr. Bruce Lipton, to be able to bring that out into the world. And then I had so much fun. We were talking about joy. I had so much fun creating and doing that I would love to be creating curriculum and teaching around that, but then doing more of that type of project. So that's what the fire horse lit under me. And that's the magic that was waiting inside of me that wanted to be released. And I feel like it's starting to, I don't know, the idea of Mickey Mouse and Fantasia just show where he puts his wand up and the sparks start to come out. I feel like that's where I'm at right now. The sparks and the shooting stars and the light is starting to come out of the stream.
I am so excited to see what you are going to create and bring to the world.
Thank you.
But in conclusion, I have to just highlight your Oracle card deck, the Council of the Horses. It's probably one of my favorite decks.
Thank you.
The writing, so for anyone listening who doesn't have this deck, if you love good writing, and I mean really good writing, you really need to get this deck. I think these messages are the only ones that have ever brought me to tears. Wow. To read them and for that to really sort of hit home, I understand what this means and really sort of touch the heart and the soul of the issue that you're asking about. So I had actually picked a card before we...
You did?
Yeah, I did. And there was one paragraph, strangely, in the Alchemist.
Get out! The
Alchemist card. And it was like, well, of course. I mean, the cards never lie. They will always tell you exactly what the message is. So if you will indulge me, and I will read you just the one paragraph that was drawn, that I was drawn to read from this. As equine alchemists, We know that everything in the universe is made of the same energy, as above, so below, as within, so without. Therefore, everything and everyone, including you, can be transformed. Our part in this transformation lies in the highest alchemical principle. Thoughts create reality. Only the mind limits. Therefore, liberating the mind liberates all that the mind perceives, which in turn affects reality. If you can change how you are thinking and what you are thinking about, your reality will follow. Beautiful words and a beautiful conclusion to the year of transformation.
And it's interesting, Claire, because that's the card that I drew for the year of the fire horse come up and coming. So before the wheel turned, and what am I meant to do with this coming year, before really the idea of fire horse even landed, and that card said, okay, what do I want to believe? What thoughts do I want to nourish? And out of that kick in the pants that that card gave me, the fire horses. So those, the horses of the fire horse of the alchemist there, were the catalyst for creating the fire horse this year. So
Fabulous.
it started it, and now you're reading it and it's ending it. And so look at the beautiful cycle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Sandra, can you just give us a little bit more in-depth information about the program if anyone was interested in taking it? Just to give us a little bit of a snippet of what it involves.
Sure. Well, the year of alchemical transformation has a number of different components to it. It's going to begin with a welcome from the fire horse, and it's kind of a first person welcome from the horses themselves. And then it talks about what will we forge together? Are they going to ask you or invite us? They share the legend of the fire horse as well, and then talk about what this why this year is unique and how to work with the guide, the year-long guide. The first part is about igniting, so understanding our inner fire and learning the fire horse protocol, which is broken up into 3 different sections: daily sections, but also seasonal sections. There's also going to be practices and invitations and reflections and exercises that go along with each of the parts. The first one being ignition, the second one being about spring and summer, third about autumn and winter, and the fourth about how do we live with fire? How do we live as the fire and with the fire? How do we tend the fire together? And then looking beyond the year, looking now that you've learned these skills and these practices and you've engaged with them and you've become a fire tender, you've become an alchemist, how do you apply those gifts and skills beyond the year? So we'll call that a final nicker. It's sort of a way of the horses bringing things to conclusion. One of the things I love about the guides is a particular case studies, case examples. So I think one of my favorites I'll just share is about, and I'm going to just read this little section here because it's an example and practice is what I call them. And David was a friend who is a graphic designer. And what he did with this particular invitation or practice was he set a recurring calendar block at 2 o'clock each day, and he called it his tempering time. So he'd leave his phone at his desk and he'd walk into the office or the kitchen where he drank a full glass of cold water, and it needed to be cold, and he'd run his wrists under the tap for about 60 seconds. And he focused on the shock of the cold against his skin and the way the internal heat of the day began to settle into a steady, usable hum, like a productive hum. There's that word productivity again. So maybe that's also worth reflecting. But in his case, he needed to be productive. So he listened to a few tracks from his midday playlist before he'd then go back to his desk. So by choosing this deliberate cooling, he found that his focus was able to sharpen before he'd go back for the remaining gallop for the rest of the afternoon. And his example is one of physiological alchemy. And it's a connection between the cool water and the usable hum. This is a literal transition from the fire that consumes to a fire that empowers, which is one of the things we were speaking about. So that's just one of the examples from someone who's been practicing the fire horse protocol. A friend of mine who said that they'd be happy to go through the experiment in a way with me and share how the fire horses were nourishing them and helping them ignite their day, but maintain tempering. I love the term tempering because it's about working with what is and refining it, bringing it to its most, like when you think about tempering metal, uh, in that case, in a forge, it's being, pounded and banged. And sometimes it can feel like life tempers us. I've used that saying before, that I've been tempered by life, that it's banged away at me every now and again. And as a result of that, my steel or my metal has become even more refined and more precise. So the forge fire provides an intense heat in a way. So the cooling of his wrists under the tap, the drinking of the cold water is that exchange between the heat and the coolness that allows that tempering to occur.
It's wonderful. And I think it's important to also know that this year is the year of the fire horse from February 2026 to February 2027. But taking this program allows you to take that fire horse energy through every year you're on it.
Absolutely.
I mean, don't we all want transformation all the time?
All the time. And then also the invitation too is in the transformational process, there's times where we need to, as you said earlier, Claire, rest. So the metal or the conditioning or the cells, the beliefs, they need a chance to integrate, to soak in, but also to settle in. And I think part of the idea, the struggle around burnout is that we feel that we're in a constant state of moving, and that balance is going to be really important in the fire horse year, because the danger, the risk then is that we just burn out.
Yeah. So there is the understanding that there is transformation in the doing, and there's also transformation in the not doing.
Absolutely.
So for anyone interested in taking your program, learning more about the fire horse and working with you, how do they contact you? How do they find this information?
Oh, it's easy. SandraWallin.com, and right at the top of the menu, it says fire horses. So you're very welcome to go and meet the different horses there, the different offerings, the invitations that they're extending. If you have any questions about any of that or at all, please feel free to reach out. Contact information is on my website. And it would be lovely to have you come and sit around the fire with us. So thank you for joining Claire and I, and also Claire. Thank you as always. I love our Claire and I tease that we get together for 20 minutes chats, and then 4 hours later, our husbands are just knocking on the doors.
Yes, my husband will often say, "Oh, okay, dinner's going to be late tonight then."
That's because we have important things to sit around the fire to talk about, Claire.
We do, and it brings us joy. So there.
Exactly. You bring me joy. So there.
Oh, ditto. Thank you so much for joining me and joining everyone today and sharing your wisdom of the fire horse, and really look forward to working with you in your program. It sounds so exciting and transformative.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire.
Okay, bye.
Bye.